trajectory, and the demand was increasing in almost every situation. And the drivers are, there's a lot of transformation of the land, of the forests, and then we have the industries involved as well. So just general increased utilization of the natural resources, and obviously the stakeholders who are involved in all of that are the farmers, the industries. So it's pretty, in summary, it's pretty obvious, really.
It's for itself.
Any questions? Debate?
Your condition, how did you...
This is after having done a detailed survey of the natural ecosystem. Assess the condition relative to its natural condition. How is it relative to its natural condition?
Which methods?
What do you want to go into detail?
It depends on
the quantity. We would have, on the quantity, because this is a developing country, we didn't have good baseline hydrological information, so we modelled that. So we modelled what the natural flow should be, and we compared that present day flow to natural flow. And in that way we determined that the quantity is slightly less than what it should be. More?
Anyone of the group or wants to comment?
You broke habitat down into 3.
Yeah, so some of these we had to break down. So like the freshwater, the quantity and the quality are quite different, and they can be operated quite differently. And likewise, the habitats, forest, wetlands, and coastal.
I think actually this is really important because one characteristic of ecosystem services is that they are spatial. The flow of ecosystem services is different in the spatial condition. So, for example, if you look at the watersheds, we saw that there's one river, or well, we have the provision of the services at the upper watershed, and the consumption or the demand of the services in another place. And it always, I want to say, it differs in time and in space.
Yeah.
And it's really important to consider when doing an assessment like this. So it makes a lot of sense to look at different ecosystems and see where these services are provided.
The assumption is that, like in terms of your stakeholders, your local government would pretty much feature in all of those categories. Like fresh water, surely you would have your local water authority or water affairs as a stakeholder.
So I was under the impression that the stakeholders were all the drivers. So in other words, these are the drivers, so catchment degradation. Who's the stakeholder responsible for catchment degradation? Farmer. So indirectly government.
Yeah, okay.
So they'd always be there. They'd have to be.
It looks like, well, it looks quite negative, but you also identify positive conditions. For example, when in the case of raw materials, timber, your assessment of the condition is positive.
Well, there's a lot of supply at present, and that's fairly there's still a lot of timber available.
But if timber export is supposed to increase, wouldn't there be a higher flow of raw materials?
We looked at current status.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So standing timber.
When is the assessment done? Is it done right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what we were going to propose is that the timber, the export of it needs to be done sustainably. So it might not be as lucrative as the original plan was intending to just break the plant and get rid of all the timber.
And if we would look at other raw materials, for example, for biofuels, would the trend be the same?
No, so obviously it's a slight go up.
but maybe at the cost of other ecosystems.
At the cost of other health.
Okay. And could you use, when I'm following the stakeholders you identify with regard to the drivers of change, they are all kind of contributing in a negative way.
Yeah.
Were there, or have you had any discussion on stakeholders which contribute to conserving ecosystem services in the group?
When it dealt with drivers of change.
Okay. But change could be positive.
Negative change.
Okay, thank you very much. Then, yeah, an applause. We move to the second group.
Ecosystem services. We distinguished the quantity and quality of water on the conditions, and also for raw materials, if it was meant to go to local communities or to export. So that's why we have a supply increasing for exporting of fuels. The supply is always decreasing because of pressures, population growth, exploitation, change in habitats, and the demand is increasing. So you have all the drivers, so like change in habitat, pesticide fertilizers, exploitations, climate change also in some ecosystem services, tourism, and then on the stakeholders we identified like for freshwater tourism associations, because tourists need water, the same for the food, habitat, we want to do ecotourism. We also identified NGOs in some case to protect water, to protect habitats, and also they have an impact on local people, indigenous communities, so they have less fresh water, less food, and problem with habitats, and also raw materials. And then another group of more private investors, so like water companies for fresh water, agro-industries for food and raw materials, and I think that's the main groups of stakeholders that were impacted and again impacts on the trends of ecosystem services. So. Any questions?
No questions.
We're in the lunch.
Okay, so just to make a small wrap-up of this session, of course this was a really quick and dirty assessment. In the real world we wouldn't probably do it that way. But still in a lot of countries, and I'm talking on behalf of German Development Corporation where we work, there's not a lot of information quality is not good. So in a couple of cases you will have to deal with situations like this. You just don't have information, but you still, decisions are being taken every day and you still want to influence decision making. So maybe, or in some cases, an assessment like this could be a good starting point in order to further identify needs for research, for further studies, and so on. And this matrix we use is a kind of a multi-criteria assessment, and as I told you, unfortunately we couldn't have the input on assessment methods, and there are a lot of different assessment methods, and you can find information on the handout of the PowerPoint, but I would like to highlight two models. They are called INVEST and IES, and they are quite new, and they combine socioeconomic with biophysical data. So this is actually quite interesting in the area of ecosystem services, because they allow, of course, if you need a certain amount and quality of data and information in order to insert into these models, but still this is an interesting new development, and you can find the links to the web pages of these
There's a conservation campus tomorrow on the invest in
perfect.
the morning
Perfect.
and valuation methods.
Okay. And of course, there are other types of evaluation methods. For example, the more conventional biodiversity monitoring indicators, where you can also gather information, and satellite images, and each and every method has advantages and disadvantages. So, choosing the appropriate assessment method will depend highly on the time you have, on the resources you have, on money, on expert, on knowledge, on capacity. So, okay, but actually finishing this step 3 just already gives us some hints on the importance of stakeholders, because we were looking at the conditions and trends and the drivers of change and the stakeholders behind those drivers. But now we only have like a general idea of some stakeholders. It's still not complete, but we still don't understand why do they act the way they do. So we need to have a closer look at the key stakeholders and at rules, informal and informal rules, at laws, regulations, behaviors, culture, and in order to understand why they act the way they do. And that's what we're going to do in the next exercise. And you're not going to have to go back to the group work. This will be different. We will have a role play. This is actually my favorite exercise because it's really funny. The development committee decided to do a stakeholder workshop, and they invite all the relevant stakeholders of Indaba province to make their statements during this workshop. So now you will not be into the shoes of the consulting agency, but you will represent different stakeholder groups. You will get just a small amount more information, and then you will have to make up your arguments in order to give a good statement at the stakeholder workshop. So that's what we're going to do now. And for this one, just briefly, maybe come over here. During this exercise, we will do a short version of this exercise. We would look, or we would try to create an overview of the stakeholders and their positions and interests and needs. And in order to understand a little bit more what is meant by positions, interests, and needs, I painted this nice iceberg model, which tries to explain that what people say they want is just the, what's it called, the tip of the iceberg. And below this, beyond the surface, what you not see are the interests, which means why they want it. And these are closely related to the needs and the values. And that is what you need. You need food, you need shelter, you need culture, you need identification and stuff. And this is really related to the interest. But what, for example, we will see this at the stakeholder workshop. What you're listening to are basically the positions of the people. But what you need to understand if you want to address better policies, better solutions for development, you need to understand also the interests and the needs of the people. So, now you will get an invitation. No, you will get more. You will get the exemplary result sheet from the last exercise. You can have a look at this matrix, how our proposal would be to fill. Then you will get an invitation for the workshop. Maybe you can help me. Mr. Smith, or in this case it's me, it's Mrs. Smith. She's invited for the stakeholder workshop, and you will represent different stakeholder groups. And we are now 12 persons, and I think I have 6 stakeholder groups, so in some groups there will be only 1 person, and in another group there will be 2 persons. And yeah, we'll try it like this. Who wants to be the governor? Any natural leader present? If not, I will just pick up one.
Okay, you're going to be in the government. Who wants to be the representative from the biofuel company?
Me.
Thank you. And the unit of tourism and recreation, growing business in Darwin. Timber company. Still a lot of forest in Darwin. You? Timber company. And we have the cocoa cooperative of smallholder called Cocos. Just one person. You're going to be representative. And then we have the Bakuan Nature Conservation Environmental NGO. And then we have the Federation of Indigenous People of Bakuan. And the last one is the Water Enterprise of Bakuan. So I think you and you can feel free to join one group, whatever you want. So you got the invitation, you got a little bit of information on your stakeholder group, and don't forget you can also think about alliances and corporations. You just heard who's going to be who, so you can try to talk to the other stakeholders and build up alliances before you go to the workshop. So it's not one against each other. You can also think about. And you will find more information on the invitation on the next slide. There's a little bit more information. So we will meet in 10 minutes. Just think about how to prepare your statement. You will have a couple of minutes to express the state or the perspective of your stakeholder group at this workshop, and you won't have that much time, so you have to be precise and really tell the development committee what your concerns are. Are there any questions? Or is it clear? You can also use propaganda material, you can call the press, whatever, you can be creative.
Can we join the business room? Can we form an alliance? You are working together. Are you working with me? Or you are with us?